Yo, it's your boy Logos, and I love Star Wars. Always have, always will. I might not like the current media and direction they're going, but the old movies, the old TV shows, the Star Wars universe, characters, the lore, even the stuff that they call quote unquote legends, I consider that stuff to be much more valuable than the trash we're getting out now. Even though I'm pretty much giving up on Star Wars, I tried to give the Acolyte a try. I watched the first episode. The whole time I'm thinking, why am I wasting my life like this? The hour of my life I can't get back. And I gave it to them. Of course, I was proven right. But still, I love this property. I love the characters, and I love what it symbolizes. So I'm curious to see why Disney just doesn't give a shit anymore. And I know Kathleen Kennedy runs it, but anybody else, maybe Dave Filoni, I don't know anybody else that's causing this shit to fall apart. That's what I want to talk about. Learn more, get my thoughts about it. There's a lot of BS and negative, I guess, propaganda about Star Wars fans and nerds in general. I'll buy into it completely, but we'll get into it throughout the video. Let's get started.
Star Wars is very like patriarchal, so it was kind of cool to have like this sort of woman-centered figure.
I think it's canon that R2D2 is a lesbian.
I wish there were such a thing as spaceships. Then I could use one to get me off this frickin' planet. Hi, my name is Sydney. Welcome back to hell. And as per usual, before we launch in, today's video is sponsored by MyHeritage, which I actually love. And of course, you guys know the drill, by me and my little tea company, Lions Tea Exchange. And in case you missed it in my last video, in light of the fact that I have just had a birthday and have officially hit the wall, I'd like to celebrate by giving you pretty people 10% off store-wide. I've added some new bundles to the site as well, but as you guys know by now, I've worked very hard to create something that feels like a little gift to yourself that also tastes really, really good. So use code THEWALL for 10% off, buy yourself a box. I will pop the link in the description. So over the last number of weeks, I have been quietly watching from the sidelines the entire internet meltdown over the new Star Wars show, The Acolyte. And honestly, it's not really all that hard to understand why. Somehow, the show has managed to include references to non-binaries and they-thems.
Who is that? That's Basil. Is he or they with us?
This is so clearly so Star Wars. Did you guys not know that Chewbacca's actually a furry and part of the LGBT community? In a love triangle with Yoda and all of the Ewoks. And the lead actress, Amanda Stenberg, also a non-binary they-them, called everyone racist and bigots in a rap for not liking her show. I leave you guys alone with the entertainment industry for 5 minutes, and this is what I come back to? Stenberg also managed to copyright claim people on YouTube for using tiny snippets of her rap, notably the Side Scrollers podcast, who used a section of her video in their video.
How tolerant. I just love it when people who want others to accept them for who they are, what they believe in their lifestyle, don't like it when somebody just give an opinion. Listen, you can like Star Wars, you cannot like Star Wars. That doesn't make you racist, homophobic, any other BS empty insult they throw at you nowadays. I watched the show, and like I said at the start, I'm surprised I even gave them that. Outside of, I think, spy series, I can't remember the exact name of, which is a shame. I think it was Andor or something like that. That's the only thing I've heard that's remotely decent. Even still, I don't trust Star Wars to keep going with good content or good choices. Even if I start Andor, or whichever the name of the show is, I bet more that Disney will end the show because it's not getting enough eyes, which is partially Disney's fault. Like, if Disney made good shows and didn't have them fall apart at the beginning or the end, you would have more people watching Andor, which is actually a decent, damn good show with good writing. And that's the issue with the Acolyte. It's just boring. There's no good writing in it. I just don't give a shit about anybody. I wanted Old Republic Star Wars movies, stories. Not this. This is just terrible. I don't know what all the budget went into. I just don't see it on the screen. I'm not gonna give them any more of my time. And she's a coward.
Actually asked them about this, and they said that they were surprised she was able to place her song in the YouTube copyright system, clearly with the knowledge that people would be reacting to it on YouTube. So yeah, there's that. Disney/Star Wars is clearly sending their best. But seriously, for those of you who have been following this drama, it really seems like The Acolyte is yet another attempt by Disney to force corporate feminism down everybody's throats, undoing well-understood Star Wars themes, undermining male characters, and ensuring all female characters are strong and flawless.
So my character, you know, she's a powerful leader. She's a powerful leader. Yes, yes. In a very woman-centered world, which I...
Listen, there's nothing wrong with having good, strong female characters. But Leia is one of the most iconic characters. Forget male or female, just most iconic, one of the most iconic characters of all time. And it's not constantly thrown in your face like, I'm strong, I'm powerful. You just watch her actions, how she carries herself during traumatic, horrible, world-shaking events, like, you know, watching her home planet getting blown into bits by her soon-to-be, well, she doesn't know yet, but you know, her father. Come on. It's so easy. Like, they make it so difficult. This is not as hard as they make it seem to be. And here's another thing too. Not every character, male or female, has to automatically be good or strong or powerful. You can start off weak. Ahsoka started off weak. She was a Padawan and it made sense. And look at her now. You have a whole show dedicated to her. Like, even if it may be shit, this is what you can do. You can actually develop a character over years and not try to rush her to the end game. It could be like fucking Luke Skywalker. Whatever.
Well, I was very excited to kind of be in that, because I feel like Star Wars is very like patriarchal, so it was kind of cool to have like this sort of woman-centered figure.
And it genuinely seems
I'm sorry I had to cut off again, but it's mostly men that are fans of Star Wars. Look at the name, Star Wars. War. Most men, including myself, are into studying war history. How many young men like myself study Rome or ancient Greece or any other empire like the Mongols, the samurai, anybody you could think of, ancient Egypt? Like, come on. That's another thing I just don't understand. Your fan base is clear and obvious. It's been clear and obvious for decades. They're just gonna say fuck them and not give a shit about what they want. It just makes no sense.
like not a single actor or actress in The Acolyte, and probably honestly in the rest of their shows and films, can even understand what Star Wars and its legacy is all about. With most of the actresses in particular parroting talking points around feminism and woman power and diversity in a world dominated by men.
I think that when it comes to the world of fantasy and sci-fi in general, it hasn't felt like a safe space always for people of color. And it's been a world that I've always deeply loved and been invested in. So to be in any way, shape, or form a part of the wave that is ushering in inclusion and safety for Black nerds, it's my dream come true.
Hey, just because you're a Black nerd like me doesn't mean you speak for me. I'm not gonna let them get away with how they did John Boyega character in the last trilogy, which was shit for the most part, trash. Like suddenly you care about minorities or Black nerds or whatever the hell you just said, or Disney, not just her, just the whole agenda or whatever. What the hell happened to Finn? You would naturally create a cool character who was turned against the stormtroopers or whatever the version was in the newest trilogy. Either way, you had an interesting character turned against the Empire. Then he is on the good side, and it seems that he could be force sensitive. Then he really just does nothing with it after the first movie. Or what about the fact that on their advertising, I think they reduced the size of Finn in China, other countries, because you know they really don't like black people as much as people want to act like the whole world is inclusive and nice, and it's only the rest that has racism. What about that? We're gonna talk about that? I don't think so. I just don't buy none of this book, man. Create a good story, create cool characters that are worth investing in, and I'll be invested. You notice people don't really say much about the Valerians and House of the Dragon about them being black. For one, it makes it a lot easier to understand and keep track of all the fucking Valerians and Targaryens and stuff. But also, the main guy, the actor, he's killing the shit. Like, it's a thing too. Make a good story, give them good stuff to do, show their skills. You can't just thrust them into some BS and say, hey, why you don't like it? You're racist because you don't like it. Come on, man, give me a break.
True.
But really, who could blame them, given that the women at the top who are driving these changes don't even understand the franchise themselves, preferring instead to alienate Star Wars' male fanbase, while at the same time creating unrealistic, unlikable, female-centric entertainment. Disney has been at this game for quite a while, with most of its princess remakes leaning heavily into these themes, and many of the Marvel shows and films repeatedly giving us Mary Sue-esque characters. But Star Wars is, perhaps, experiencing the most egregious push when it comes to the attack of feminism and insufferable political messaging. And it's made worse by the fact that, it seems, many people behind these horrible changes are women, which is just, like, so embarrassing for all of us. And I'm not gonna lie, seeing all of the absolutely insane comments made by women who are performing in the Acolyte really made me want to talk about this. So that's what we're going to talk about today. The women destroying Star Wars, why they're doing it, and how we can get this nonsense to stop. Just kidding, I don't have an answer to that.
Yeah,
and of course, all of my regular disclaimers. I'm not going to get to everything in this video, even though I have tried to include as much as I can. And actually, as I was editing this, I was finding more things I wanted to add, but I just was like, we don't have time for this. But before you once again board my hell gondola and together we cry our salty tears of sadness to fill this lake of sadness on which we are floating, let's hear from today's sponsor, MyHeritage. Understanding your roots is important. The family kind, not the tree kind. You can learn about yourself and your family, like who may have been a gunslinger or a serial killer. Sydney. No. And because I have always wanted to learn more about my history, because my family is from all over Europe, I was really excited to partner with MyHeritage to find out more about my family tree. With MyHeritage, I
thought about using something like this myself because I'm interested to see, your roots and where you come from. Plus, with how much I love history, if I figure out I'm from where I have certain parts of my DNA or blood or whatever the fuck from certain parts of the world, I'm gonna deep dive into those areas in history, the culture, and just what they've been doing for the past, few thousand years or so. So it's a good thing if you care about that type of stuff. But let me also be honest. From my understanding, I think 23andMe, other places like this do sell your biological data. I'm pretty sure, 90% sure. So it's up to you if you want to do it. Of course, it's your life, your DNA, your blood, your medical, privacy. So I'm not going to judge you. You're going to die someday. So it's up to you. Just something I want to throw out there.
I've been able to trace my family back to the 1600s on my dad's side. This, for example, is my great-great-great-great-grandfather. What a looker. MyHeritage actually lets you upload images like this and enhance them, colorize them, or even animate them, which is so unbelievably cool. I've also been able to correct some less understood things on my mother's side, like the actual maiden name of her grandmother. And all of this was actually reasonably easy to do because MyHeritage is home to over 19 billion historical documents from all over the world that help you find records of your family members. numbers. Like this census here for my grandma, who may or may not have lied about her age, or this other census where my grandfather's name is mysteriously spelled with a V instead of a B. MyHeritage also has a feature called Instant Discoveries, where, with a handful of known family members, it will start piecing together your family tree for you. So if you too want to learn more about your roots, then click the link in the description or scan the QR code on screen to start your MyHeritage 14-day free trial. In 2012, shortly after Disney purchased the media property Star Wars, the film's creator George Lucas sat down with the new president of Lucasfilm, Kathleen Kennedy. In the interview, Lucas laid out what he believed was the nature of Star Wars, the underlying message. He expressed that it revolves around the dangers of selfishness and the transformation of democracies into dictatorships, explaining that people can and will misuse their freedom, leading to the rise of those who exploit power to strip away liberties.
Run your life in a very selfish way, and you think you're doing good when you're actually not. And at the same time, it's how do democracies turn back into dictatorships? Why do people who have the power to have the freedom and everything turn it over to somebody who's going to take it all away from them? It's happened through history forever and ever, and all Star Wars is a way of updating that idea to say, watch out, because there are people out there who don't play by the rules, and if you're not careful, you're going to lose all your freedom. And at the same time, those people who may not play by the rules because they're selfish and greedy turn themselves into evil people who don't care about other people.
There you go. The essence
Playing
of Star
out
Wars.
today.
Kennedy also said that the main focus going forward was to protect the characters and make sure that they continue to live the way that Lucas created them.
The main thing
That's
is
a
to
lie.
protect these characters, make sure that they still continue to live in the way that you created them, and that the universe of Star Wars continues to grow.
The sad but probably not terribly surprising reality is that this didn't happen at all, both from the perspective of following Lucas's original dream for the franchise and staying true to its underlying values and message, and protecting the characters and allowing them to live as Lucas intended. Sadder still is that in an interview from 2015, George Lucas expressed that even if he wanted to be involved in the direction of Star Wars, the people who had taken it over didn't want him there and didn't want his direction.
All about generations, and it's about, the issues of fathers and sons and grandfathers, and it's a family soap opera. I mean, ultimately, space, we call it space opera, but people don't realize it's actually a soap opera, and it's all about family problems and that. It's not about spaceships. So they decided they didn't want to use those stories. They decided they were going to go do their own thing, and so I decided, fine, but basically I'm not going to try to, they weren't that keen to have me involved anyway, but at the same time I said, I'm not going to, if I get in there, I'm just going to cause trouble, because they're not going to do what I want them to do, so, and I don't have the control to do that anymore, and all I would do is muck everything up.
And despite the fact that he had left them with a huge catalog of material from which to work, Star Wars, under the leadership of Kathleen Kennedy, veered down the road of corporate.
This may seem like a small thing, but I just want to just highlight how corny this is. And in real life, she just got her head cut off.
And despite the fact that he had
She stops looking at him to look at the blade as if like it magically popped up in her hand. And he could, like, if he got any sort of training, I can imagine it's like a small girl. If this is like a real fight, because I ain't watched the show, because, short life, I'm not immortal, not going to waste it. But if this is a real fight and not just training, this is really dumb. And I guess it's supposed to be like funny, cheesy, corny, like some Marvel movie type stuff. But come on, man. This is not realistic. What's stopping him from just pulling his blade back while she's looking away and just cutting her down with a lot of force before she can fully block? Maybe I'm looking into it too much. But it's just stuff like that kills the immersion. If I'm watching an intense fight, they should be taking it seriously. They should be fighting like their life is on the line. You don't look and do a dumbass grin at the guy that's trying to kill you mid-fight. Come on.
left them with a huge catalog of material from which to work, Star Wars, under the leadership of Kathleen Kennedy, veered down the road of corporate feminism and mainstream diversity practices that are so common today in Hollywood. All of this seemingly kicked off with the 2015 film The Force Awakens, an addition to the Star Wars franchise that focused on a female-led story with the character Rey. Right out of the gate, Rey's storyline had many fans shaking their heads. Some people argued that she didn't have any meaningful character arc and became excellent at many things without any prior knowledge and minimal mentoring and training. Rey was inherently skilled at things that took powerful characters years and years to achieve, notably Luke Skywalker, and if we can pull someone from these later films, Kylo Ren. What's interesting is that, even at this time, the feminist-driven agenda was well and truly in place. And if you cast your minds back to the 2015 George Lucas interview that I just referenced, it's even more depressing when you realize that The Force Awakens had been released only a few months earlier. Poor George. Actually, as another aside to this, I found a particularly frustrating video where Kathleen Kennedy is talking about George Lucas like he's died.
There isn't a day that goes by or went by as we were making the movie where we don't talk about George. You know, it's the standard, what would George do?
You can just give him a call, Kathleen, but you...
She's lying. Because she really cared, or they really care about what George would do. I don't think the story would have played out the way it did. The way Finn was handled, the way that Rey didn't have any type of real struggle or no good progression in terms of you see her get better and better, and it makes logical sense. Like she said with Luke, him training, him losing the first time against Vader, and then winning against Vader by not actually, fighting him. That was the main issue. But it could have been cool. There's nothing wrong at all with a female Jedi being a male Sith Lord or a male Sith. Come on. If you watch, or if you play, which I played just a little bit, but I love the trailers. Star Wars: The Old Republic, the MMO. In the second or third trailer, I think Satele Shan or something like that. She fights one of my favorite Sith in all of the Star Wars universe. I can't remember I think Darth Malgus or Malice or something like that. But yeah, it's a woman and a man fighting, and he overpowers her, but she uses her force abilities and her, smarts, plus the help of a clone. Well, not a clone. I'm sorry, not a clone. A soldier to help defeat him. And it makes sense. It makes her look powerful. It makes Malgus look powerful. And it shows how desperate this fight is. You have a good and gripping story within a 2-minute trailer. A 2-minute trailer, and I bought into this female Jedi. Well, this is the second time she showed up, but even still. I'll give you that. Okay, 4 minutes of this female Jedi that I never heard of before, and I'm rooting for her, and I'm impressed by her abilities. It's not that hard. It's really not that hard. We have $200 million plus in the budget. You can afford the best writers and directors in the world. If you got an ego, you're gonna screw it up.
You won't do that because you're a pair of sweaty salad tongues and you pushed him out. Congratulations,
Exactly.
You killed a man's dreams. Probably not the first time. But it's not particularly surprising Star Wars was starting to go down this road. Everyone orbiting the project and Lucasfilm had been very open about their messaging objectives. In an interview with Good Morning America, the film's director, J.J. Abrams, said that he hoped to transform the long-running space opera from a boys' thing to a female-friendly franchise. His comments, which actually landed him in some hot water, leading to many an article from an angry woman shouting that the early Star Wars films were for her too, still acknowledged that Star Wars was always a boys' thing, and that dads could take their sons to it, which honestly, that's pretty freaking true.
Star Wars was always a boys' thing, and a movie that dads could take their sons to.
It still is.
And though that's still very much the case, I was really hoping this could be a movie that mothers take their daughters to.
You could take your daughter to, if your daughter loves action, a good story, cool character, you could take her to any film of quality. that's appropriate for her age. Come on, that's the thing. When you try so hard to get at a certain group or audience or whatever, not only alienate the people that your core fan base, you're also doing too much for the people you're trying to get. You're not really focused on making a good story so they have something to actually, be a fan of. You're more focused on making them think that you're on their side before the film even comes out. Like, come on. Word of mouth is the best advertising you can get. Of course, it's free, but also like it's genuine. If people around you say this movie is good, this movie is worth watching, paying money for, sitting down for 2 hours or 3 hours or an hour and a half to watch, there's a good chance I'm gonna watch it.
At the same time, Kathleen Kennedy also gave an interview where she said that she's trying to grow the number of women at Lucasfilm and the number of female protagonists, adding that the vast majority of people who worked on The Force Awakens were women.
We are trying to grow in the workforce the number of women in executive positions and in all positions inside the company, and with the movies that we're making and with the protagonists that we're putting in the stories. So I get a huge amount of support with that. But we have 50% of our executive team are women. Okay. And 6 out of 8 of the people in my story group are women. And I'm sure there's a lot of people that would be surprised that we're making Star Wars movies and the majority of the people involved in the development of those stories are women.
Don't get me wrong, I get women uplifting other women, and actually, I'm all here for that. But what's like the primary motivator of killing merit? Why do you want all these women, Kathleen? You want your cycles to sync up? Now, some of this absolutely seems to be an overcorrection of sorts to decades of male-led projects in Hollywood and entertainment. After all, it's only been in recent years that female creatives has started taking up more space in the industry, after plenty of women from way back when attested to just how challenging it was to break into the entertainment field and then be taken seriously. Some of the most notable and beloved classics are male-focused, male-orientated movies that strongly appeal to male audiences. And while I can understand the drive to see more things that appeal to women, more things that involve women, which, like I'm always here for, you guys know that I love a good, well-written female lead. I don't think that the way to go about that is by attempting to ham-fist feminism and diversity into that which already exists. But this seems to be one of the central issues with Kathleen Kennedy and her band of female creatives. According to these women, as far as Star Wars goes, there must be more female representation, even if it doesn't make sense and even if the audience doesn't like it. Even as far back as 2012, Kathleen Kennedy had literally assembled a female-only group of writers, directors, and showrunners, some of whom, notably Kiri Hart, Rain Roberts, and Carrie Beck, have held and continue to hold executive roles at Lucasfilm. And each of these
How do you keep making trash and unsuccessful content over and over again and you don't get fired? Only Disney can afford to lose so much money and not course correct. 21st Century Fox or Lionsgate or Warner Brothers or many other franchises, especially Warner Brothers. They'll usually course correct if they're trying to do a series or a big franchise and it's not working out. Like, come on, look at DC. Shoot, that's part of the problem. They do it too much, too often, too quickly. Disney doesn't give a shit because their goal is obvious. It's not making good content. DC, you can say what they want about them, but at least you could feel like they're trying. Yes. Like, I feel like because Suicide Squad, the newest one, was very damn good. I'm glad I took the time to watch it, because it's hard for me to watch movies nowadays, especially new ones, because oftentimes they're just not worthwhile if you ask me. Only show I watch right now is House of the Dragon. So, like, it takes a lot for me to watch a movie. And that was a good movie. They took a chance, remade the first Suicide Squad into a good movie, even though the first one didn't pan out at all. And it worked out. That at least shows me they got at least a goal or agenda of being successful with good content. Also, the same thing with I almost said Homelander. Um, with John Cena, his show. I watched like a couple episodes and I just fell off. That doesn't mean it's bad. I just fell off. I do that often. But still, John Cena's show. From my understanding, that was pretty good. The episodes I watched were pretty good too. At least DC, WB seems to give a damn. Have an agenda of success and pleasing their audience. Disney doesn't have that.
Women, seemingly from day one, were united with Kathleen Kennedy in her quest to completely reorientate the Star Wars franchise. Whether that was hiring women for specific tasks at the company, writers, directors, other people who do things in this space, or forcing female representation and diversity into every single project. And if you think I'm exaggerating, I'm not. In 2017, the New York Times published an article titled "The Women Who Run the Star Wars Universe." The article discussed Kiri Hart's female-only story group, explaining that in the early days, they literally sat around and discussed how they wanted to create more female characters. Today, the story group has expanded and added a handful of men, which, I mean, okay, good stuff. But their objectives are more or less the same. More women and more diversity. Starting with, for example, the growth of Ahsoka as a story in the franchise. A character who, just by the way, was originally not remotely well received by audiences.
Nope. I hated her ass so much growing up. I watched the movie, and then I watched the show. And I hated her so much. But eventually, as the story goes on and she learns, she gets better. Her emotions, everything that you know, she progresses as a character and the person, you like her. Then you can make a show about her and people at least give it a shot because of they grew up with Ahsoka. They know Ahsoka from Rebels. So, you have the blueprint right there. You're trying to milk the finished product, but you don't want to try to do the same thing with the actual, other character and make them good and likable. Stupid.
It's like there's a theme here. However, the group proceeded forward with her anyway, allowing her to satisfy a desire for another female lead and someone who doesn't look white. Because she's orange, I guess. This article also credits this writing group with the diverse characters in The Last Jedi, specifically pointing to Rose Tico, played by Kelly Marie Tran, the first Asian American woman to star in the saga. Oh my god, our barriers of entry are so low. And for their efforts, this largely female-led writing.
And that's a good example too, because her character felt so pointless in that movie. The whole thing with Finn felt so pointless. I don't get. How is this progressing Finn? How is this progressing the story? How was her? I think she was like an engineer or a mechanic. Is she going on a mission to save the galaxy just because she's a mechanic? Finn is a soldier. Rey can use the Force. The dude, the pilot, is a pilot. Obviously. Chewie is Chewie. Like, why is she there? Why is she there? And then that rear Force kiss, like, come on, man. This is stupid. I'm gonna go a little bit further and then I'm gonna stop because this is too long to keep going all the way through, but I'm gonna do the part 2, please.
Group was able to pat itself on the back for including more women and more non-white people and more diversity than ever before. But obviously, this feminist forward thinking didn't stop in 2017. If anything, it's only accelerated since then. Not only because we have been saturated with Star Wars content, but what's being churned out looks completely different to Lucas's original vision, and frankly, at least in my opinion, that's a bit of a travesty. That's putting it mildly, of course. This is in fact terrible. then it makes me sad inside. I can't help feeling bad for this guy because his entire contribution, the entire thing that he brought to the world, has just become one giant womp womp. In April 2023, Kathleen Kennedy said that even more women-led projects were on the horizon, insisting that they don't set out to have women in charge, but it just so happens to go that way. Okay, Kathleen, we believe you. She said, I think we have attracted some really strong women in front of the camera and behind the camera, and that's been thrilling. She was, of course, referring to the upcoming Ahsoka series, The Acolyte, which we'll get into in a moment, and the upcoming movie about Rey set 15 years after the events of The Rise of Skywalker.
Okay, I'm gonna stop right here because he's gonna get into the Acolyte and other stuff, so this is a good stopping point. Listen, man, I don't give a shit about Rey. You had 3 movies to make me give a shit, and y'all couldn't do it. Now you want to jump 15 years in the future, and somehow she's supposed to be more interesting now? How are you going to explain how she got to be a master? Flashbacks, horribly, excuse me, terribly written exposition, uncreative dialogue where they, oh, you did this and that and that. Come on, where it's just so heavily, just heavy-handed. Not in the way that Game of Thrones does it, where you get tidbits from different characters, and the reason why they bring it up is because it's relevant to the overall freaking story. This is trash. This is gonna be trash. More, what, $300-400 million wasted on something that we don't even want. Whoopee, like. And I think is Bob Iger still in charge of the overall like company? Why is this girl, this lady, Kathleen Kennedy, not fired? I don't know. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. I'll get part 2 out pretty soon. It's your boy Logos, and I'll see you next time. Peace.